You guys are watching Fight Feed. Today I am going to be going through my picks for the upcoming UFC Fight Night. Ian Garry versus Carlos Prates fight card that's happening in Kansas City, Missouri. In this video, I'll be going through the entire card from start to finish, letting you guys know who I think is going to win each fight. I want to call out, just because I predict a certain fighter to win, it does not necessarily mean that I dislike the other fighter. Now, in this situation where I'm not a fan of a fighter, I will absolutely let you guys know. I've had picks in the past, though, like, for instance, Justin Gaethje versus Max Holloway, where I was extremely conflicted as a fan because I wanted either guy to win. And you just have to make your prediction one way or the other. I chose Justin Gaethje, and we saw how that ended. Regardless, I'm going to dive into each fight, showcasing some of the stats that I pulled together and some of my thoughts on why I am choosing the way I am. And I'm going to go ahead and dive in. One more quick disclaimer for you guys. I am filming this on April 16th. So we've still got a ways to go in terms of when this fight card is happening on Saturday the 26th. So we're 10 days away. There could be a lot of changes that happen on this card from now until then, but I'm letting you know that I'm filming this on 4/16, so take with that what you will. The first fight on this card, we've got Chelsea Get Out Challenge Chandler versus Joselyne Edwards. So taking a look at this matchup, it was a bit of a hard decision at first. Chelsea Chandler's kind of surprised me in some of her fights. She does fight out of the southpaw stance. She has proven to be a bit of a tricky striker, and she is fighting out of Stockton. So she's got that Nick Diaz influence. I believe she's trained at their gym, but she's got a 50% record, 6-3. She's coming off of a loss. She did beat Joselyne Muniz, which I was kind of surprised by unanimous decision. So that's a good win on her record. But now one thing that she continuously does, and this is actually an interesting fight because both girls have done this quite a bit, is miss weight. I think both Joselyne and Chelsea Chandler were originally featherweights, and they have missed weight several times in the UFC. Now with that, here's another thing about Chelsea Chandler that's confusing. Her fucking age is 34 on like several websites and then 31 on several websites. I don't know what her actual fucking age is, but if I'm going off of just based on how many websites I saw her as 34 compared to 31, I believe she's 34 years old. Now, with that, her last 4 fights, she's had a loss, win, loss, win. So she's kind of just back and forth. And I guess if you're going off of that streak, technically she's due for a win. Now, I like the fact that she has a lot of volume punching and she's able to string together a lot of volume combos. And in some cases, be a bit trickier than her opponents from a striking perspective. Joselyne Muniz only has like an overhand right, and Chelsea Chandler is kind of able to pick her apart on the feet at a distance. Now, here is one thing that I feel actually, before I say this, I'm going to go into Joselyne Edwards, and I'm going to explain kind of where I'm headed with my pick in this regard. Joselyne Edwards has more UFC experience. She's just more experienced in general, 14-6. She is the younger fighter at age 29. She does a lot of very dynamic stance switching. So she does fight out of primarily orthodox, but she's able to switch quite a bit. Very active on the feet. And also from a size perspective, this is where I was headed, is Joselyne Edwards is, roughly the same size as Chelsea Chandler. Once again, confusing. Joselyne Edwards has been listed at 5'6" on some sites, but then 5'8" on others. My opinion is that Joselyne Edwards is not, or Chelsea Chandler is not going to have that massive size advantage in this fight, in my opinion, just based off of, watching previous fights with these two. Joselyne Edwards has like the biggest thighs for her body type. Like, her thighs are massive. So she's definitely got a lot of weight on those kicks she's throwing. She's just a more dynamic striker overall, and coming off of a win, she's, like I said, she's got good ground game. She's had finishes on the ground. She's had finishes on the feet. I think that she's going to be able to mix it up a lot more than Chelsea Chandler. And so because of that, my pick in this fight is Joselyne Edwards. I don't know. I could see it going to decision. I could also see her finishing the fight in like round 2. I don't know that she'd get like a round 1 finish per se, but I feel like Chelsea Chandler's scrappy enough to survive any of the onslaught that Joselyne Edwards throws her way. Ultimately, though, I think Joselyne Edwards will have the advantage on the feet and be able to pick her apart, ultimately getting the win either by decision or potentially a finish on the ground. That is my final prediction. Next fight on the card, we got Jaqueline Amorim versus Polyana Viana. Polyana, I think wasn't she like fucking around with Colby at one point and then Pereira for like 2 weeks or some shit? Okay, some of my notes on these fighters. So Jaqueline, she's 9-1. She definitely has less experience in the UFC to that of Polyana Viana, but she does have a 100% finish rate. She's pretty fucking nasty on the ground. And I feel like in this fight, her having the age advantage, her having a 3-fight win streak, looking at her last 4 fights, she has 3 wins and 1 loss. And her 1 loss is to Sam Hughes. Sam Hughes is like the fucking Robert Whittaker of this women's division, just picking off all the prospects, I guess. Anywho, I think Jaqueline, although she has the size disadvantage in terms of height, I just feel like in this fight, she has proven in her record her ability to find finishes, whereas Polyana Viana, I think, has proven in her record that she has a lot of ways to lose fights. Now, given that, I think that Polyana Viana has the advantage in terms of experience here. That could play a factor in, her potentially pulling this out. But she definitely has, she's got a couple losses in a row, and her last few losses were to higher level jiu-jitsu opponents. For instance, Jillian Robertson was able to get her down and hold her down with her jiu-jitsu, and then I think land a bunch of punches on her. So like, if you look at her record, she's been finished a few times on the ground, especially by higher level jiu-jitsu opponents. So in this matchup, I feel it's a pretty bad matchup for Polyana, and that has me leaning my pick towards Jaqueline. Next fight on the card, we've got Malcolm Wellmaker versus Cameron Saaiman. This is a hard one, guys, because I'm a big fan of Cameron Saaiman. Now, I'm going to dive into each fighter similar to the others, right? We've got Malcolm Wellmaker. This is going to be his debut fight. He did fight on the Contender Series and won with a right hook KO. So obviously you see here he's 1-0. He's actually, I think, 8 or 9-0 in his UFC, or not UFC, but his pro MMA career. He's a bigger opponent, 5'10". He's 71.5-inch reach, so I feel he's going to have that size advantage. It's a little bit misleading, however, because he does normally fight at bantamweight, and I don't know if he's taking this fight at featherweight because the UFC is just like, hey, this is your opportunity to, he did get signed on Contender Series. So I don't know if this is something where he's like, hey, I'm 30 years old now. I need to, start fighting at a heavier weight class. But just given the size of his frame and his reach, I imagine that he will have a size advantage, but it could be that, Cameron might be a little bit more filled out. We shall see when the fight happens. But I did just take that note that he's formerly a bantamweight. He is 9-0. He has so many finishes on his record. He's coming off of he's obviously got a 9-fight win streak, being 9-0. And when we take a look at Cameron Saaiman's a fucking dog in the cage. He's 25 years old, so he's going to have that youth advantage. He also has significant UFC experience compared to that of, obviously, Malcolm Wellmaker. Now, what worries me about Cameron Saaiman in this fight, guys, is that although he's a really great, really fun, scrappy fighter, he's always in the fight. Like, dude, he can withstand a lot of damage and then somehow pull out the win. He's similar to Dreykus in that regard, and they train together. So he has high-level talent that he's working with and a high-level coach, but he is coming off of a 2-fight losing streak. And I think from a historical perspective, some fighters coming off of a 2-fight losing streak either continue to lose or they're able to snap it, right? What worries me the most about Cameron in this fight is just the amount of damage he took in his last fight. And if you go watch that fight, he fought Peyton Talbot, who was recently somewhat fraud checked by another bantamweight. Bantamweight. Is Cameron Saaiman now I'm like questioning. Cameron Saaiman's shown as 147 pounds. Guys, to be honest with you, I don't know if this fight's at featherweight or not. I thought he was fighting at featherweight, but I could be wrong. He could be at bantamweight. Regardless, he took a shit ton of damage in his last fight. It was pretty bad. So when you consider all of that damage, and the one thing that worries me is watching Malcolm Wellmaker's fights, he has good timing with his punches. He's been able to catch opponents as they come in or advance in, catch them lacking in their defense. For instance, his Contender Series fight, he landed a right hook around the corner on a fighter who was advancing towards him with no defense. And I think the one thing Cameron Saaiman has that worries me in this case, he does that kind of running 1-2 that Dreykus throws, right? They have that weird blitz style that I feel like Malcolm Wellmaker, he's not a guy you want to do that against. He has power where if he catches that, and he has great timing as well, he could put his lights out. And if you compound that with all the damage Cameron's taken, it has me a bit worried in this fight. And I think I want to choose Malcolm Wellmaker just off that fact, right? He's got a lot of momentum. Guys, I'm having a hard time with this one. Because, Cameron Saaiman's a scrappy dude. I think coming off of 2 losses, he's going to be reinvigorated, wanting to get back in there and prove something. Nah, dude, I'm sorry. I just think, guys, if you go watch that Peyton Talbot fight, and this is no disrespect because I'm a fan of Cameron Saaiman. He's a fucking great fighter. Still young, too. Like, he has a lot of potential to continue growing. I'm really worried about the damage he took in that last fight, and it worries me that he might still have that blitzing style that could be exploited by someone like Malcolm Wellmaker, who's got hands. And it's also, you have to consider Cameron's going to be traveling, a significant way for this fight, whereas I think Malcolm Wellmaker's in Georgia. He's not very far away. Like, you have to factor in all of these other components. I just feel like the biggest thing that has me wanting to choose Cameron Saaiman is his UFC experience, his scrappiness, his ability to kind of take damage, withstand it, and find a way to win. Also, having Dreykus as a champion and now a defending champion multiple times, think that's also going to help support his potential to win the fight. Malcolm Wellmaker, the thing that's hard is he's a debuting fighter. So although he's got all of these bells and whistles, he's got all this win streak, how is he going to do under the bright lights in his debut? It's a very hard pick, guys. Fuck. I'm going to say Malcolm Wellmaker. I might regret it, but I think that he, like I said, if Cameron Saaiman goes out there and he blitzes in with that style where he doesn't have his defenses up, Malcolm Wellmaker might exploit that and be able to hurt him on the feet. That's what I'm going with. I might regret it. I'm a big fan of Cameron Saaiman, so we'll see what happens. Next fight on the card, we've got Damon Blackshear versus Alateng. I'm not really sure how you say that guy's name. Both these guys, though, have a lot of experience. We're going to start off with Damon Blackshear. He is 16-7-1. He's 30 years old. He's going to have a big size advantage in this fight. He's 5'10", 72-inch reach compared to Alateng's 5'5", 66.5 reach. So definitely going to have a lot of size advantage here. He also has a very solid ground game with 69% of his wins are by submission. So when you consider that, I feel like that size advantage is going to play a role. His last 4 fights, he's 50-50, 2 wins, 2 losses, but he is on a 2-fight win streak. Whereas Alateng, 17-9-2, he has just a bit more UFC experience with only 1 more fight in the UFC than Damon Blackshear, but he has a nice mix of finishes, whether it be KOs or submissions, but most of his fights go to decision. So in this regard, it's kind of hard to choose, who is going to win this fight. But I do think that Damon Blackshear is going to probably be the stronger fighter in this one. He's got like I said, he's got that size advantage off the rip, but he's just also a very strong grappler. And so I feel as though Damon Blackshear may be able to exploit Alateng, who's, he's actually streaking a bit himself with a win, loss, win-win. I do think Damon Blackshear will be able to get this one done, whether it be by decision or potentially a submission. I don't really see this ending on the feet for Damon Blackshear. I think that he would, if he is to finish this fight, it will be a submission. Next fight on the card, we've got Evan Elder versus Ahmad Hassanzada. Now, taking a look at this fight, Evan Elder is 28. He has UFC experience. He's has a bit of an interesting career because I think he's hopped around between lightweight and welterweight. 9-2 record, and his last fight was a win at welterweight, mind you. So he went up a weight class and won that fight. 72-inch reach, so he's not going to have a size advantage in this fight. But what he does have in this fight is that UFC experience, which I think is very important, especially for debuting fighters. Now, granted, I did pick the other way in a different fight. Now, Hassanzada, before I jump into Hassanzada, Elder's on a 2-fight win streak, so win-win, loss-loss. None of his losses, I don't think any of his losses are by KO, but Sadikov did beat him by, I think it was like a cut in round 3. So, but now, when we look at Hassanzada, who is a debuting fighter, he fights out of Team Alpha Male, so he's in a good camp. He's going to have a size advantage. He's 6'1", 75-inch reach, so pretty long reach for this division. Also, well, he is just a little bit older. I think the age is negligible in this fight. He did fight twice on Contender Series. He did lose the first time brutally to Sadikov. So Sadikov has fought both of these gentlemen, and he's beat both of them. But Evan Elder had a much better showing against Sadikov. So given that Evan Elder has a strong grappling acumen and I think probably the ability to take this fight to the ground, I feel like he is going to have the edge in this fight. Now, Hassanzada is debuting, and he is on a bit of a streak here with 3 wins and only 1 loss. I just feel like him being the debuting fighter here, he does not have all those bells and whistles that I think, like when I look at the other debuting fighter of Malcolm Wellmaker, he doesn't have that streak of complete, 0 losses and things of that nature. So in this case, I have to go with Evan Elder. I just think Evan Elder is the more dynamic finisher, will be able to find a finish in several areas. And also, if we're just comparing camps, not comparing camps, but Team Alpha Male, I know, has a very high... Team Alpha Male is a great camp, but we've seen fighters from Team Alpha Male, like Yan Xiaonan, for instance, have trouble with grapplers. So I feel like that could be tied to a personal aspect, but given that we've seen that struggle, and also like Cody Garbrandt, right? I don't know how much he trains out of Alpha Male anymore, but he's been choked out as well. I just think that Evan Elder, having that grappling background and also finding ways to get finishes on the ground, he's going to have the edge in this fight, in addition to having the UFC experience. I'm going Evan Elder for this one. The next fight on the card, guys, we got Matt Schnell versus Jimmy Flick. Okay, this fight's a little bit interesting. First off, Matt Schnell, I'm a fan. I do love Matt Schnell because I feel like if you've watched him fight, he's an absolute dog. He always finds a way, like in his wins. He'll make a scrappy fight out of it. even when he loses. But when he wins, it'll be a scrappy fight, and he'll find a win. And so him being 35 at flyweight's a bit worrying, but Jimmy Flick is also 34, so it's not a big deal there. Both guys have several fights in the UFC. Matt Schnell is going to have just a bit of a size and a bit of a reach advantage. I would say it's basically negligible, though, in this case. Now, the one thing that worries me about Matt Schnell is I recall him retiring. I don't know if he officially, said he was hanging up the gloves. I thought he was, but he walked out of the cage and left his gloves in his, was it his last fight? Maybe I'm confusing him. I think it was his last fight, but he is on a 3-fight losing streak. So my question that I have here is is he there mentally, right? Is this a match now walking in this fight? Is he there mentally to want to, stay in the game and continue getting these W's, or is he kind of going out there for a paycheck, right? No disrespect if he is. It's just these are things you have to question when you're making predictions. Jimmy Flick, on the other hand, 34, so he's definitely getting up there in age for this division. Like I said, not much of a size disadvantage for him. What I like about Jimmy Flick is his story. I think he has a crazy story. He has come from the mud, literally from the mud. Great wrestler with a very strong takedown game, and he has 0 losses by submission. So I called that out because I feel like Matt Schnell, a lot of his ways of winning is snatching up a crazy submission. I don't think he'll be able to get it on Jimmy Flick. I think Jimmy Flick's wrestling and his ability to scramble on the ground will give him the edge in this fight. Ultimately, Jimmy Flick also has a recent win, although, he lost his last fight. He won the fight prior, then lost 2 before that. He's definitely on a better run currently than Matt Schnell, who, has died, I think, almost died by Steve Erceg. He lost the fight after that as well. I just think when you compare these two, I just think Jimmy Flick on paper is going to be able to edge this one out. Next fight on the card, we got Ikram Aliskerov versus Andre Muniz. So what's interesting is Aliskerov, guys, he's been great. He's shown great performances in the octagon. But when you really dig into his record, 15-2, and obviously he's only lost to the best, right? He lost to Khamzat and he lost to Robert Whittaker by KO. I really don't think Andre Muniz brings that threat of a KO in this fight. However, he's a bit smaller for the middleweight division, and his reach is also smaller than Andre Muniz in this fight. What I like about Aliskerov is he has a very, very high-level striking ability with decent grappling. So, I think he'll be able to shuck off the grappling of Muniz at the very least. He hasn't ever lost by submission, only by KO. And Aliskerov has a lot more ways on the feet to find that devastating KO, which I think is worrisome for Andre Muniz. Obviously, we know Aliskerov just lost to Robert Whittaker. Not too much bad stock there in terms of losing to Whittaker previously on a 3-fight win streak. But as I was saying or alluding to earlier, if you dig into Aliskerov's record, he really hasn't fought high-level talent in the UFC before fighting Robert Whittaker. He has KO wins over the guys that he's fought, but they're just not that great of talent or haven't proven to be that great of talent in the UFC. So I feel like, I know it was a short notice fight. He definitely got rushed to the wolves fighting a guy like Robert Whittaker. He was not ready for that. I think in this matchup, though, when we compare him to Andre Muniz, Muniz definitely has more UFC experience. He's beaten some high-level talent, but he's also kind of lost to lower-level talent in the UFC. So he's not very consistent. If he is consistent, it's mainly to losing to guys that maybe he should be beating, like Paul Craig. Now, given that, he is coming off of a win, but it was a decision win. It wasn't anything that was too fancy here. He has 2 losses before that with a win prior. So win, loss, win. In this fight, guys, I just feel like Aliskerov's going to come out with something to prove. He's fighting a guy that is probably more on his level in terms of where he's at in his career. He's also got a bit of a youth experience here in being 32 compared to Muniz, who's 35. I think Aliskerov will be able to get it done. I reckon he finds a finish on the feet, potentially, because Muniz been susceptible to that. But if not, I think Aliskerov pieces him up at range and coasts to a decision in this one. Next fight on the card, we got Randy Rude Boy Brown versus Nicolas Dalby. So Randy Brown definitely got some experience in the UFC. He's fought some high-level talent. He's coming off of a loss, but he's a very large welterweight at 6'3" with a very long reach of 78 inches. He's 34 years old, so I don't think that's necessarily that old for welterweight. He's kind of getting up there in age, but nothing that's like too worrisome in this matchup. Very, very big for the division, as I mentioned, and he's a very high-level striker. Coming off of a loss, but prior to that, he was streaking with 3 wins. So Randy Brown, I think, on paper, looks like a potential good pick in winning this matchup. But he's fighting Nicolas fucking Dalby. And if you guys don't fucking know Nicolas Dalby, you got to do your research. This guy's a straight fucking killer. He stays in fights the entire time. If you don't put his fucking lights out, he is going to fucking be there and push a pace on you like no one else. Being 40 years old in this case is like not necessarily a huge disadvantage for Nicolas Dalby, because Nicolas Dalby is like always finding a way to get scrappy with these fighters and make them play his game. And because of that, I feel like his heart has allowed him to finish fights. Like, for instance, he actually KO'd the undefeated Gabriel Bonfim when they fought by sheer tenacity, just pushing the fucking pace on him and not giving up. And I think that is a style that is not going to pair well with that of Randy Brown. I could be wrong. I really love Randy Brown's fight style. It's fun to watch him fight. But Dalby's a fucking dog, guys. And I believe Randy Brown really lost his last fight, kind of getting pushed up against the cage and losing those clinch exchanges with Brian Battle. That's not a good matchup going against a Nicolas Dalby who could do the exact same thing. So in this fight, I'm really leaning towards choosing Dalby. Granted, he is a bit older now, and Randy Brown has that potential to, land some heavy shots at range. Interesting, though, that both fighters are coming off of a loss, but 3-fight win streak prior. So it'll be interesting to see how this fight goes, but I'm going to choose Nicolas Dalby to get the win. Next fight on the card, Michel Pereira versus Abus Magomedov. So Michel Pereira, as we know, fucking absolute psycho on the feet. Very brutal finisher. Age 31, looks like he's fucking turning 44. But absolutely yoked to the gills. And I think 185, he's found so much success. So it's great to see him see that success in the 185-pound weight class. He used to fight at 170. Now, in this fight, what worries me is that Michel Pereira, if he does not find that finish, in the early rounds, 9 times out of 10, the guy loses when he's not finding a finish in the early rounds, okay? Because of that, I just feel like in this fight, when we take a look at the other fighter, Abus Magomedov, Abus actually has some decent, he has a very good game, right? He's very decent on the feet, very good on the ground too. He also has proven an ability to kind of find a way to win, whether it be on the feet or on the ground. I think that he has way more ways to win this fight than Michel Pereira. Now, Abus has been beaten pretty brutally, but in moments where he gasses out as well. So it's interesting because both these fighters, I think, have questionable gas tanks. Abus has proven, though, that he's able to go a full 15 and still make it, scrappy for the most part. But what he's proven to me is like he has a way of getting a fight to the ground or overpowering in the ground if he's not winning on the feet. Whereas Michel Pereira, I feel like he's a on the feet fighter at all times. Not really much of a threat on the ground. And if Michel Pereira doesn't find a finish, immediately against like an Abus Magomedov, he's going to be in for a rough night, especially when we compare his last performance against Anthony Hernandez. In addition to that, Abus Magomedov has a win over Bruno, the Hulk, and we know the Hulk is also a very dynamic first-round finisher, and Abus was able to survive and actually find a submission against him. So in this fight, I just feel like Abus Magomedov, if he doesn't get caught early on, he's going to be able to find a way to win this fight. Next fight on the card, Giga Chikadze versus David Onama. So Giga Chikadze coming off of a loss, but he is also 36, so he's going to be a bit older in this fight. He does have 60% of his finishes by KO. He has some wins over some pretty high-level talent. I know he did the Giga kick against Cub Swanson. He's beat a lot of high-level guys in the UFC. He's never been KO'd. He's only been KO'd one time in his career. And he's fought a lot of high-level talent in the losses that he has on his record. With that, not much of a streak happening here for him. Lost, win, lost, win. Looking at Onama, he's actually a bit smaller in height, but in terms of reach, they're spot on. Onama looks like he'll be the bigger fighter in terms of strength in this fight. He is 13-2 with a 3-fight win streak. So his last 4 fights, he's won, loss, and it's hard to say, guys, who might win this. I know Giga Chikadze is looking like he is the it's not looking like he is the underdog, and with that, though, I just don't think that David Onama will have much of a submission threat for Giga Chikadze. Now, I could be wrong. Giga Chikadze has very good submission defense. I think like 74 or 75% defense for him. So I feel like in this fight, if Giga can keep this fight standing, he'll be able to use his footwork and piece David Onama up at range. Now, what's scary about it, though, is that Giga is not always as consistent with, landing those strikes or staying in the fight from a striking perspective. Sometimes he's kind of caught taking picks, and he's also a bit older than David Onama. So at this lower weight division, that could play against him. It's kind of hard to say, guys. I want to say Giga Chikadze, but now that I'm looking at the age, I think David Onama will be able to get the win here. I think that if he's able to just make Giga Chikadze kind of question those striking exchanges, David Onama will be able to coast to a decision. Next fight on the card, we got Anthony Lionheart-Smith versus Zhang Mingyang. Anthony Smith, guys, I have a lot of respect for him. Look at his fucking record. He's 38-21. 36 years old, so he's not necessarily too old for light heavyweight, but he's got a lot of mileage, guys. Even though he's only 36, he's had so many fucking fights. And he's, lost his last 2. He's lost his last 3 out of 4. One in the middle there, where he did fraud check a rising prospect in Vitor Petrino. So the one thing that you have to think about here is Anthony Smith's one of the most experienced UFC fighters. He's got some of the most fights in the UFC. It's like 20 fights plus. So he will also have a size advantage here. And Anthony Smith, if you look back at this guy's record, he's taken out killers, right? So he took out, what's that Australian guy's name? Jimmy Crute. He took out Jimmy Crute when Jimmy Crute was on the rise. He hadn't really lost much yet in the UFC at that point, and Anthony Smith took him out. Took out Vitor Petrino. He took out... Is there another one? Maybe Zhang Mingyang. We'll see. So in this fight, what I question, though, is just... Smith came in his last fight against Reyes, and it's like he didn't want to be there. I know he was going through a lot mentally, but what I worry about is it's like, this is a retirement fight. So is he going to come out guns a-blazing, ready to fucking put it all on the line because it's his last fight? Is he going to play it safe? It's hard to say what Anthony Smith we're going to get. If we're going to get Lionheart Smith, the one that doesn't fucking stop, and doesn't give up, he has a good chance to find a way to win. Now, Zhang Mingyang, on the other hand, he's a young, scrappy dude, very, very strong on the feet, 4-fight win streak. He's got 2 KOs in the UFC, but not over high-level opposition. So what I worry about in this fight is is Zhang Mingyang going to be able to find that finish on Anthony Smith? Is he going to be able to crack him early? Because I think the longer this fight goes, the worse it is for him. And Anthony Smith is one of those fighters where it's sometimes he looks like he isn't all there striking wise. And then sometimes he looks like a fucking killer. Sometimes he's able to trade with the best, hurt them on the feet, and find a finish. So it's like, even when he fought Ryan Spann was like the first fight they had. Smith fucking hurt him quickly and then choked his ass out. So it's hard to say, guys. Anthony Smith is a parlay motherfucking killer or builder, depending on which way you go. I think that just given recent performance, though, I might have to go over to Mingyang, just given that he is young gun, blazing with all these wins, going to be hungry to make a statement here. I could be wrong. It's just, dude, it's so hard because it's like I don't know what Anthony Smith we're going to get, guys. I think I'm going to go Zhang Mingyang. I think he'll be able to hurt Anthony Smith on the feet and just keep him at bay or potentially get the finish. Fuck. I got to just go move on. I was about to fucking change it and say Anthony Smith because that motherfucker, man. All right, we got Ian Garry versus Carlos Prates. So this fight is actually very interesting, especially when you start to break it down. You got Ian Garry, definitely going to have a size advantage, I think, in this fight. Now, reach-wise, he doesn't have a reach advantage, but Ian Garry, when you see him in the cage at welterweight, being 6'3", he just looks more filled out than a lot of his opponents. And I think that that's going to be the case here. Carlos Prates tends to run a bit thinner. And what worries me in that regard is that Ian Garry is a very high-level striker. He's got a small youth advantage in this fight. The one thing that I'll say, though, is that Ian has now lost his first fight. He was 14 or 15-0 before that. Ian is guaranteed to play it safe, guys. Like, if you go watch Ian's fights, when he is getting pieced up on the feet, which he's been pieced up several times, MVP was piecing him up, he does the safe approach of like, I'll grapple you to the ground and I'll wrestle you. And he's okay with having a boring fight. He's absolutely okay having a boring fight. I know that on Ariel Helwani, he had a bit of an edge to him, was saying, I'm going to push the mouth off him. I don't know that he's actually going to do that because he says that about every fight and he hasn't done that in quite some time. Training with Charles Oliveira, having a bit of a size advantage, very high-level striker, so I think he'll be able to see the traps Carlos Prates tries to set on the feet. I just feel like Ian Garry is going to be able to find that safe approach of like, I'm going to get him to the ground and I'm going to wrestle it out. That I highly suspect this fight, on paper, it's supposed to be a banger, but I kind of expect it to go Ian Garry playing safe, doing what he has to do to get the W, whether that means making it a fun fight or, laying and praying. Carlos Prates, on the other hand, very tricky fight for Ian Garry, given that Carlos Prates is not much older. He has a, decent experience in the UFC now, but not as much as Ian Garry. However, Carlos Prates has a 11-fight finish streak. So every fight he's had in MMA, his last 11 fights are all finishes. I think 4 or 5 of those are in the UFC. And he's actually finished opponents like Neil Magny that Ian Garry wasn't able to finish. So that tells you right there, he is a very dangerous guy when it's standing. But he's also riding the win streak of his team, the Fighting Nerds. So, which I believe they're undefeated in the UFC across, Gene Silva, Carlos Prates, and Kyle Braulio. So this fight's very interesting because Carlos Prates could potentially, we might see him find a shot that hurts Ian Garry. I do think that Ian Garry might just be high level enough from a striking perspective to evade the danger that is coming from that of Carlos Prates. And I feel like should he get hurt, Ian Garry will be able to wrestle and throw in parts of those games. I know Carlos Prates is a purple belt, I believe. Someone let me know on my channel. Thank you for that. But I just feel like although he's a purple belt, jiu-jitsu doesn't always mean you're good at wrestling. And I think that Ian Garry has proven that he has wrestling in his game. Also trains with Charles Oliveira. I just feel like Ian Garry has more ways to win the fight. And I also think Ian Garry has less shame about making it a boring fight. Like, he will make it boring if he has to. And I honestly, that where I see this fight going is Ian Garry turning into a Dagestani wrestler, because I do think Carlos Prates, the way he fights, will be able to catch Ian Garry and make Ian Garry question if he wants to stay on the feet. Now, it could go another way, though, too, where Ian Garry maybe catches Carlos on the feet. We'll have to see what happens. But my assumption in this fight and my prediction ultimately is that Ian Garry will find a way to get the win. And this is the fight, though, where I'm going to tell you guys I want Carlos Prates to get the W. Carlos Prates is just more fun to watch. I do enjoy Ian Garry when he is on the feet and actually engaging and finding finishes. But he's just, I feel like he's played it safe in a lot of the high-level striking fights he's had recently, like Jeff Neal, for instance, and even Shavkat, MVP. Like, he does what he has to do to win rounds, and I get it. You know, it's his career, but ultimately, I just, Carlos Prates is such a more fun fighter to watch in the octagon. So those are my predictions, guys. I hope you enjoyed this. Make sure you comment below who you think is going to win each matchup. Give this video a like if this is helpful for you, and please subscribe to Fight Feed if you are interested in watching more MMA content like this and other videos that I'll be posting about anything MMA. Appreciate you guys for watching, and I will see you on the next one.